knowing kind of the intended outcome and having your goals in mind of what kind of practice you would like to have, and then counterbalancing that with the reality of what that can do for you from a financial perspective is also equally important, especially as you're getting started out. But just always good, I think, to take these types of articles and reflect on them and weigh out the various thoughts that you've already had to help yourself figure out, okay, what does fit my personality? Where will I actually be fulfilled in what I'm doing? Or is this going to be a step or a climb on the ladder to the next part of my career, and making sure that I'm learning as much as I can from this experience, even though maybe it's not the thing I want to do for the rest of my career.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer Podcast. I am your co-host, Thomas Vick, joined by our co-host, Seth Wilson. Seth, how's it going today?
Thomas, I'm doing great. Really excited to be able to sit down and chat with you for a few minutes today about the law firm life. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of challenge, and we really, just value the time that you and I have together to kind of share the journey as we go, and hopefully help others who are kind of in that world as well. How about yourself?
Things are going well. I always enjoy the time to talk about law practice and how to first get into law practice and kind of launch a person's own law practice, and then how to manage it, and how to see to it that it succeeds. So kind of excited about the topics that we have today. We had kind of several topics that we wanted to talk about. First one that we want to hit on right off the top is a new trend that we're seeing in law practice, and that is mergers of law firms. There was an article in the Indiana Lawyer recently. There it is, all about how law firms are tending to merge with one another. And so we kind of wanted to talk about that trend and what we can take away from that. What are the circumstances, Seth, that kind of lead to law firms merging together?
Yeah, that's a great question, Thomas, because I think that sort of is the underpinning of these mergers. And so a lot of times you'll see this in maybe a firm that is trying to establish another geographic presence. So maybe they're located in Indiana, but they also want to be located in Chicago or Washington, D.C., or even globally. You'll see some of those types of mergers as well. And so I think one of the interesting things is you're leading a law firm is how does that work across the continuum, right? I think our focus is probably more on the smaller size firms and working through that process. And I think in those contexts, sometimes it makes sense to combine forces with a firm that offers a practice area that maybe you don't, but complements your primary practice area. Or maybe you are seeing an uptick in the need in your community for a certain practice area. And a firm partnership or a merger could make sense in those considerations as well. And the article here is kind of highlighting that this has been a trend that is continuing. And this is in the November 5 through 18 Indiana Lawyer, and kind of one of the front page articles there. And really just kind of an interesting note, I think, especially if you are an attorney considering launching your own firm and or starting a firm, and then what's the purpose of the firm? Are you trying to grow it? Are you trying to keep it at a certain size? And being aware of these opportunities that are out there as well, and seeing that kind of on that national scope. So I would encourage folks to go check that out on the Indiana Lawyer website.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to kind of take note of the trend of law firms merging with one another. And yeah, there could be a multiplicity of factors that go into a practice area being one of them, a geographic area, kind of what you were talking about. And I don't know, maybe just people want to practice together. That might be a reason to do it. It just kind of depends on the circumstances. It might be that a general practice kind of wants to bring in somebody that has a more specialized practice area. So maybe a general practitioner that takes all kinds of real estate disputes and family law. Well, they've got a good practice, but maybe they want somebody to handle intellectual property. You really need somebody that is on the cutting edge of that and up to date on all of the latest precedents and legislation that has been passed on intellectual property. So that might be a reason, just to add another practice area to the law practice. It might be in a rural area. It might be you kind of mentioned the metropolitan area. That's kind of where you see the bigger ones form. But I think we may take a look at, some opportunities later on in the podcast for kind of expanding reach for a smaller firm. And I'm kind of excited about that portion of our discussion.
Yeah, and I think one more thing that came to mind as you were talking, Thomas, is sort of that centralization of the administrative processes that can happen in a law firm. So if you're a smaller firm and you're handling all of or wearing, I think the analogy goes, all the different hats in the law firm, and you're trying to run the billing and the calendaring and the file servers and the email, and if you can merge with someone who already has a good established system, that can increase sort of that operational efficiency. And so sometimes that could be a good consideration for combining those practices and assisting each other with the provision of services rather than handling the administrative overhead that comes with running a business. Or maybe just somebody has a little bit more experience and you can leverage that or kind of partner up, if you will, and make sure that you're doing the things that you really want to focus on. Now, that's also something to really be aware of because you may be the one who wants to make those decisions and have that autonomy and control. And that may be why you got into a smaller firm situation or a solo practice in the first place. And so there's sort of that two-prong analysis or balance the scales one way or the other. But again, another idea that could support the idea for a merger of, hey, we're really trying to centralize operational efficiencies and allow us to provide those legal services. And I think especially as you see the increase of technology's impact through artificial intelligence and just the provision of legal services and the proliferation of all these availabilities, sometimes that efficiency is going to be a driving factor for the long-term success of the firm.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And that kind of leads to the next topic that we wanted to talk about is, passion versus pressure. And there was another article recently in the Indiana Lawyer about advice for new lawyers: choose passion over pressure. It's an article by Carrie Spear. It was published on October 22nd. And, that is a factor in which direction you go. When I think about passion, maybe I've got a passion for serving clients in family law because, for whatever reason in life experiences, my life has been impacted by a family law situation. And so I want to be there to advocate for my clients and make sure that through that difficult process, whatever it might be, my clients are well represented. That maybe that's a passion that you have. And so you want to pursue that. Versus pressure, well, when I think about pressure, or all kinds of pressure in law practice. It's a pressure-filled field, but, I'm thinking about pressure on billable hours. You have to have 2,000 hours of billable time every single year. And if you don't, then you don't get your bonus at the end of the year. Now, that big law firm pressure, is that really the kind of lifestyle that you want to have? And I think, Seth, you probably have more experience with that than I do. You didn't work for a huge firm, but you worked for a medium-sized firm coming out of law school. And that's kind of where I was. Like, do I want to try to find a job with a big law firm, or do I want to kind of do my own thing and set myself up to serve the clients that I want to be able to serve? And my practice area is estate planning, elder law, and estate administration. Do I want to be able to choose the type of clients that I have and serve them in the way that I want to? while also having control over my work-life balance and all those kinds of things. And it seems like in this article, choose passion over pressure, they're kind of indicating, that you know, choose what's best for you. What fits with your personality, your passion, if you will. Life is more enjoyable when you like the work that you do. If you enjoy what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life, as they say. Coming into, work every day for me, I don't dread it. I enjoy it. I enjoy being in the office and talking with clients and figuring out problems. It's not always, sunshine and rainbows, but most days I enjoy what I'm doing, and it has paid off. So I guess I can vouch for the fact that, choosing passion and choosing your own path, if you will, is a great way to do it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because the article called out sort of the driving motivations of money, prestige, and passion as sort of one of the paths that will probably help determine which direction you want to choose. And we've always talked about that in our office as power, prestige, and pennies, just to get the alliteration going, right? So to have that memorable of, okay, people are generally motivated by one of those three things. Is it the power? Is it the prestige? Or is it the pennies? And you can watch that play out in various avenues of life and how that impacts your decision making. And so one of those motivations is likely going to outweigh the other in a particular choice that comes to you to make a decision on. And so you may have an offer from a job that gives you a little bit more on the pennies side, but it doesn't, help you with that prestige side because you really want to have that influence. And the article highlights the different areas of law, right? Like if I wanted to go into a public interest field, for example, or policy making, or I want to defend the Constitution and I want to argue constitutional law, there's different motivators associated with that. But there's always the counterbalance and reality of, yes, you also need to provide for yourself and your family. And so I think your point is well taken of you also have to bring in that reality check and say sometimes the passion piece may be there, but it doesn't quite generate the pennies yet. And so you got to figure out a way to take both of those and continue to develop that area of passion while you're pursuing these other things and meeting the day-to-day responsibilities. And so if I want to go become the next great arguer in front of the Supreme Court, that's going to take a long time to get there because you have to develop the reputation and the cases and all the things that go along with that. Whereas if I want to go hang my shingle and start doing other types of law where the community has a need, I'm probably going to be busy pretty quickly. And so those are the decision points you get to make. And again, knowing kind of the intended outcome and having your goals in mind of what kind of practice you would like to have, and then counterbalancing that with the reality of what that can do for you from a financial perspective is also equally important, especially as you're getting started out. But just always good, I think, to take these types of articles and reflect on them and weigh out the various thoughts that you've already had to help yourself figure out, okay, what does fit my personality? Where will I actually be fulfilled in what I'm doing? Or is this going to be a step or climb on the ladder to the next part of my career, and making sure that I'm learning as much as I can from this experience, even though maybe it's not the thing I want to do for the rest of my career.
Yeah. Um, yeah, choosing the path, and if you choose the path of starting your own practice, use us to be a resource. Check out our podcasts. We like to talk about law practice management, and one of the topics that we often talk about is marketing, and marketing is just so important to the heartbeat of a law firm. And this kind of tracks with trends in the law, new kind of news that is happening. And I think you had an update about we talk about Clio a lot. Clio has an update in how they keep track of contacts.
Yeah, in fact, this is hot off the press, if you will, because it showed up this morning when I logged into Clio Grow, which is the client relationship management software portion of the Clio suite of tools. And I know we've talked about this in the past. You use a little bit different version or a different software now, but Clio Grow is that CRM that helps us manage cases before they actually become cases, right? So when clients contact us and we're sort of in that intake phase or initial consult phase, and we've not yet determined, if this is going to turn into a matter, we want to make sure that we're tracking all of that as well as active matters. And so Clio Grow handles that for us. So the big key there is obviously the context. And this past year, Clio Grow and Manage enabled two-way synchronization so that the contacts can be mirrored, and you make a change on one side, it shows up on the other, etc., which is very, very beneficial. And then they have started to, now that that capability exists, adjusting sort of how the contacts are classified. So it used to be in Grow, it was called a primary contact, and I think now it's called a client. And or you have intake statuses or no hire statuses. And so just being able to filter your lists a little bit, especially as you grow and have a lot more contacts in your database, is really, really helpful. And you don't have to go through and do different tags and sort of workarounds that we had done in the past to filter those lists. These are by virtue of where they are in the system and how they're attached to a matter or something. They're getting automatically categorized for you, which is very helpful. So I haven't really played with it to the full extent yet to know exactly what changes that's going to bring, because I've had Clio for a number of years, and so I already have a system that I've used, and I'm going to have to make some adjustments, I think, as we go through. But just awesome to see these types of features being added and making our job even easier in terms of making sure we're tracking that information, putting it into the system once, and then being able to use it throughout the life cycle of the case and the life cycle of the relationship with the client, which in the estate planning context can be a long time, which is pretty awesome.
One of the key features of Clio Grow that when I used it, I really enjoyed was keeping track of the sources of the clients, the prospective new clients that were coming in. So, you could say, okay, this person came in through an event, a seminar that I did. This person found me on Google. This person booked a call through my website. This person found me through some legal directory or lawyer referral service, something like that. And I always felt like that was so critical so that I know where to put if each one is a basket, where should I put my eggs? What basket should I put my eggs in? And so it's really helpful from that standpoint, and it really helps you to evaluate if I'm, engaging in this social media campaign. Should I put more money into this campaign, or should I take money out of that campaign and put it somewhere else? You can kind of decide, as you're kind of reviewing and analyzing what is working, what you should do. But yeah, tracking sources is huge, and knowing if this person is a prospective new client or is a current client, that's really important so that your law firm as a whole, your staff knows where they are in the pipeline, if you will, where they are at each stage of the matter. Have we had an initial consultation? Have we had a follow-up phone call after the initial? Have we sent out an engagement letter? If so, has the client signed it? If the client has signed it, have we, scheduled another appointment to actually sign everything that is needed for that particular person's situation? Just being able to categorize it, as you're saying, is so important so that everybody in your team knows how to treat that person when they call.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Thomas. Is I had an experience at a bank recently where a new teller was being trained, and there is some indicator in that bank as to the client or customer status with the bank. And that is such a beneficial thing for someone who may be unfamiliar with the client base. When a long time valued client calls in, there should be some way to say, boy, make sure you're taking care of this person because they're a valuable part of the client team with our office. And so anything we can do to make sure that those databases for contact purposes are clean and current and up to date with relevant information makes a huge difference. And these tools keep that real possible. And I love how you brought up the sources and kind of tracking your marketing efforts. And so let's talk about that for just a minute in terms of your process for tracking the various methodologies that you're using and tools that you're trying to use, and then figuring out, okay, wait a minute, I have no idea where this client got my information, and how do we navigate that as we're growing our firms?
Well, there are some tools that you can use to track, just online tools that you can track. If you have a certain kind of phone number that's attached with your phone system, you can have a phone number that will basically, in Lawmatics, it's what I use. It will tell me they called through the website because they called this specific number, which is a little bit different than my regular number that's listed on Google. So that may be one way. You've got a specialized phone number to identify where they're coming from. Google has some capability to show you, if you're doing like local service ads, Google can tell you, okay, this person booked through the Google local service ad or what have you. But sometimes it's just asking the client. I tell our staff to always ask the question, how did you hear about us? And they may say, oh, you just Googled you and, found you online. Or it might be that another attorney recommended us, but they didn't mention that right off the bat. So that question is helpful. It just kind of depends on how the conversation goes and how the client is, perceiving us at the time. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to ask that question, especially on, your first impression. But, whenever a client has said, okay, we're going to do an estate plan with you, I say, okay, that's great. And I start drafting an engagement letter that I have a template for, but I have to edit it a little bit on the fly. And so there's a little bit of dead time. And during it's starting to get to be an awkward period of silence, I say, hey, how did you hear about us? I love to do that because they've already said yes to me. They're pleased with what they've heard. And so asking that question, they're ready to answer, and they're not going to be offended by that. Okay. And they say, oh, I found you on Facebook. Okay, great. In my Lawmatics program, I can just say source, Facebook. And now I can tell how many people I've gotten in this month and really over the year from Facebook. And that tells me that, my efforts are paying off on that. It's kind of interesting. Also, you keep track of where these leads are coming from, and maybe they're coming from a distant place from you. Maybe, somehow you've become the guy, an hour and a half away, and these leads are coming and coming. And it kind of makes me think, well, should you maybe think about opening up an office in that area so that you can have more of a local presence? And so as a law firm grows, that might be something that if you track your leads and you're kind of seeing where things are coming from, maybe it makes sense to have more of a localized presence.
Yeah, there's so much value to be had in understanding the data and having more than just that gut feel. I think we talked about that last week in a little bit of a different context, but having something to give you some objective information about where are the clients coming from. And there's an old adage in marketing that says half of what you do works, you just don't know which half. So trying to figure out what to stop, what to keep doing, where to focus are all a constant reevaluation. And the more objective measures you can have to help inform that decision, the better off you're going to be. And you're going to see those trends start to occur of, wait a minute, these are all coming from this location or this practice area or this referral source, and paying attention to that. And then as we kind of move into the kind of the third phase of our evaluation of our law firm is, okay, what's the legacy piece here? What are our big ideas? What's opportunities in the future? What are these situations that we're going through make possible for us that we hadn't really thought of before? And that's the fun part of working on your business, not just in your business. And there's a balance there of, boy, if I could do this, that might expand this whole area of service that I hadn't ever thought of before. And we had a little bit of that this year, having the ability to open up a second location. And we can talk about that on a future episode as well, just kind of the thought process that went into that and the planning and how that's gone. But those types of possibilities don't always come if you're constantly in the day to day just navigating what's there. But when you can get back and get some perspective and go, wow, this over here really could be sustainable on its own. And maybe it becomes its own thing. And you start figuring out ways to make that happen. It's just a fun part of the process of running a law firm.
Yeah, I love the progression, and I think it's really important if you go into law practice that you have an attitude of, we're going to grow. We're not just going to be stagnant. When you get stagnant, that's when you're going to actually start to fail as a law firm. And so if you're not trying to progress, there's something wrong. So you need to be open to opportunities for growth and to think about how your law firm can serve needs in other areas in better ways, and just constantly trying to improve. And I think that will be something that, it'll be good for you, but it also kind of bring purpose to your entire team as they see you working on those projects.
Yeah, and I think that highlights why we do this podcast, because we both enjoy that interaction with each other. And we were talking about it so much, I thought, well, why don't we just record what we're talking about and share that with others? But also, we're always trying to get better at what we're doing here and make this time that we spend a good investment of our time and resources for the benefit of others who are kind of going through the same, or maybe just a little bit behind us, if you will, on the path. Because if you're going to lead something, someone has to follow it. And those opportunities we've had to have these discussions and the experiences that we've had along the way and the failures and the lessons that we've learned from those, we can help other people avoid. And it's fun. It's really fun. And I love to see other people succeed in this and really develop that law firm that they are passionate about, because ultimately we're here to serve the client's needs and help them through, whatever that area of practice you settle on is, right? That becomes that provision of service that helps keep everything moving forward. And I 100% agree. If you aren't growing, you're doing something else, right? You're slowly dying and going the other direction. You got to keep moving forward with that. And that keeps me re-energized every time we get on the mic to sit down and go, all right, what's Thomas going to come up with today? Or what are the experiences that we have, or other people that we get to interact with on a day-to-day basis? But just such a fun time to brainstorm that. And again, we're trying to continue to get better as we deliver some of the content that we've come through. So you may have noticed a little bit of a different structure for us, kind of talking about that news of note, and at the beginning, things that we've kind of caught throughout our readings and what we're thinking about for our firm. Focus then on a section on helping lawyers launch, right? So what if you're getting ready to go out on your own or start your own firm or join another small firm, what are some of the considerations, and try to bring some practical tips around that as well. And then what are we doing as we're leading our own firms, having that marketing moment to figure out, okay, what's happening here? How do we handle staff issues? We've talked about in the past couple of weeks, adjusting meetings and those kind of things. And then the legacy portion of our discussion. What's the purpose of everything that we're doing here, right? Are we staying aligned with that mission and vision that we have? What are the possibilities down the road? What can we do to increase our abilities to provide service? Not necessarily opening up multiple locations, but maybe that's the situation. Or we have the opportunity to bring somebody else into the firm and grow it a little bit that way. Is that the right thing to do? And so I'm really excited about kind of this next season of episodes that we have planned, because I think that we are getting clearer on the provision of what we're doing through the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And glad to be a resource for everyone. We encourage anybody that is thinking about opening up a law practice or in the middle of a law practice to reach out with questions. We'd love to answer questions on the podcast, also correspond with you. via email, all that kind of good stuff. We'd love to have some communications from those that are watching. I think that'll do it for today's podcast. The best way to get in touch with us is probably through the YouTube channel. Leave a comment on the YouTube channel and we will reach back out to you. Also, you can watch this podcast or listen to the podcast anywhere that you can find your podcast. So I encourage everybody to do that. We are the Lifetime Legacy Lawyer Podcast, helping lawyers launch. Seth, I appreciate it.
Thanks, Thomas. We'll see you all in the next one.